Joining me now are three of the best political analysts in the country. We have Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Daily News, Michael Goodwin, and syndicated columnist Miguel Perez. Also, Jonathan Martin, senior political reporter for Politico.com. Gentlemen, thank you. Let's start with Washington State. It's fascinating. It's coming up. So 78 delegates. The governor endorsed Obama. The senators endorsed Clinton. Who do you think has the advantage in this contest? Let me go to Jonathan, the remote guest. Go ahead, Jonathan.
You know, I think that this could be a state where Obama actually does pretty well for this reason. He tends to perform well in states that have a high population of well-educated, liberal-leaning, sort of affluent voters. And goodness knows, Seattle has got plenty of those. This is the home of Starbucks, after all, so it seems ripe for his kind of voter. Now, that said, she will probably perform better in outstate Washington, well beyond Seattle, because she tends to do better with more downscale white rural voters.
Let's take a look at the delegates right now, and we do have the counts. Hillary Clinton, total 1,033. Barack Obama, 937. We have Louisiana with 67 delegates and Nebraska with 24. How do you think it'll play out after this weekend, Miguel?
Louisiana looks very good with the African-American population there for Obama. I agree with Jonathan about, what's happening in Washington, but what's happening in Washington with the elected officials divided is what's happening all over the country with the Democratic Party. All Democrats are divided over this issue.
Michael, do you think this tight race is going to continue?
I do. I happen to believe also that that neither one will break free of the other very far in a significant way, and it ultimately will come down to the superdelegates, the party officials, the members of Congress, the Democratic National Committee, of which there are about 400 members. So altogether, about 20% of the delegates are free to choose whoever they want, and I think they'll make the final choice.
Does it appear that the Democratic voters could be disenfranchised with this emphasis on the superdelegates? Miguel,
no, especially if it goes beyond the superdelegates and we start talking about Michigan and Florida and whether Senator Clinton has the right to claim those, and maybe this whole thing will end up in court.
Yeah. Well, now that you bring up Michigan and Florida, Senator Bill Nelson today said that the Democratic Party is heading for a potential train wreck by not counting the delegates in Michigan and Florida. Jonathan, thoughts on that?
For every day that sort of ticks off here, and especially given that John McCain effectively has won the Republican nomination, I think you're going to see more and more Democrats becoming concerned about what's going to happen in this race as we get into March, and particularly if we get into April and this race is still going on. I think you're going to see some graybeards in the party speak up and try and bring some kind of resolution to this. Guys, if we're talking about super delegates, talking about the Florida, Michigan delegations being seated at a convention, that's bad news for a Democratic Party that right now can see a victory ahead.
Michael?
Well, it's not the sort of thing that turns voters on. Voters don't like this stuff. It's not what they want. They don't want to fall back into the process of Congress and Washington and party control. They want excitement on the stump, progressive ideas. That's what the Democratic Party wants right now. So it's a setback.
Yeah, and with the youth vote being so energized, with this being a very dynamic campaign season, to start suddenly talking about superdelegates kind of puts the sizzle out of it.
The cynicism will rise very quickly.
Yeah. Let's listen to what former President Bill Clinton had to say about his role in the Clinton campaign and how he feels now.
Well, everything I have said has been factually accurate, but I think the mistake that I made is to think that I was a spouse like any other spouse who could defend his candidate. I think I can promote Hillary but not defend her because I was president. I have to let her defend herself or have someone else defend her.
What's Bill Clinton's role? You're laughing, Michael. Go ahead.
Well, he's a victim again. He was an honest mistake. He thought he was just another spouse. Come on. He ought to just go away on a long vacation. If he really wants Hillary to be on her own, he ought to just take a hike.
Kitty,
go ahead, Jonathan, go.
It's classic Bill Clinton. It's sort of a half defense, half apology, all baked in one. And look, he recognizes that he did some damage, I think, in South Carolina. He's now trying to walk that back. But he also is, at his core, a politician, and he can't help himself. He's got to be out there on the trail at the rope lines. It feeds him.
Yeah, no, it's his milieu. Let's look at something that Wall Street Journal columnist Peggy Noonan wrote, which I find intriguing. She wrote, Mrs. Clinton is losing this thing. It's not one big primary. It's a rolling loss, a daily one, an inch-by-inch deflation. The trends and indices are not in her favor. Isn't it a little early to be saying this?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a little early, and I still think she's the favorite. It's still hers to lose. It's an uphill battle for Senator Obama at this point. I mean, he still has a good shot, but it's not the way she paints it.
We just put up the delegate count, and it doesn't really speak to that. Go ahead, Michael.
I think Peggy's a terrific writer, but I think in this case, Clinton is still the favorite, slightly because of the superdelegate arrangement and Bill Clinton's ability to work the room with the superdelegates and her presumptive situation. Obama has failed twice to dethrone her when he had the chance, first in New Hampshire and second on Super Tuesday. So I think, in a way, she remains on top until he knocks her off.
Yeah. Let's go to the Republicans. Fair point, Michael. Let's go to the Republicans so we don't short shrift the Republicans. John McCain, we're doing delegate totals. John McCain, 714. Mitt Romney, let's see, 286. Mike Huckabee, 181. Ron Paul, 16. Where do we stand here? What do you think, Miguel?
Well, it's not over as long as the Republicans keep fighting with each other. I mean, it's obvious that McCain is the nominee, but it doesn't mean anything as long as the party is so divided. So people who are saying, no, but McCain has all this time and has all this advantage over the Democrats because the Democrats are bickering. Well, the conservatives are still bickering and they're still very divided. And I don't know what they're going to do because sooner or later they're going to realize that it's either McCain or Hillary.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to be wanting to vote for Hillary very.
Let me just bring up something that John McCain said today in Kansas, really trying to appeal to the conservative base.
I am proud to carry the banner of a conservative Republican with a record of conservative thought and action and voting and principles and values into this election in November, and I need you to help me get there.
Now, McCain was cheered and booed at the Conservative Political Action Conference. Jonathan, what do you make of McCain's position and how he has to restructure his image?
There was a reason why Senator McCain had Senator Sam Brownback behind his left shoulder. Recall Brownback ran for president last year. He is the senator from Kansas, stalwart cultural conservative, and McCain needs to win there on Saturday. They're going to have a caucus. It wouldn't necessarily hurt him terribly if he lost, but it would reinforce this idea that he's having trouble with the conservatives in his party. But look, this party is coming around to the realization that John McCain is going to be their nominee, and the best motivator that they have is the specter of Hillary Clinton being the Democrats.
I mean, we really have to ask, can the conservative Republicans afford not to support McCain? Do they risk losing the whole thing?
Well, that's a rational question, I think, for an individual. The problem is that I think for the Republican Party in the fall is going to be enthusiasm. And if there's no enthusiasm among large segments of the party, then they're not going to turn out in large numbers. Right. And that was the genius of Karl Rove, was turnout. He didn't expand the base. He just turned it out down to the last voter, especially in 2004. And so without someone to do that, without a real incentive for turnout, the enthusiasm's not there. Voters don't show up on Election Day.
Jonathan, I'll go to you for a second. You were saying you were...
Yeah, I would just say that Michael raises a very, very important point, and that is these conservatives faced with Hillary will probably suck it up and vote for John McCain. The key question, and what could ultimately determine this race, will they put in the man hours? These folks worked for George Bush in 2000 and 2004 like bees. They made the phone calls, knocked on doors, put up signs. I'm not sure they're going to have that same motivation for John McCain, but we shall see.
But, we heard a lot of negatives about John McCain from the conservatives before Super Tuesday, and yet he still managed to pull off what he pulled off. Miguel?
It's an uphill fight for any Republican. Definitely it's going to be McCain now because the lack of enthusiasm among the Republicans and the additional enthusiasm we see among the Democrats. I mean, the Democrats are turning out in some states 2-1 just in turnout. Yeah. And so that means that, they are motivated to go out and vote, and the Republicans, if they don't get their act together really, really quick, they're never going to do it in time.
Well, also, Kitty, I would argue that some of McCain's victories are not what they seem. He did not really win the southern states. And it's a southern party. Republicans are largely a southern party today. Winning New York and Connecticut and the northeastern states is fine, but he didn't pierce the armor in the southern states, and that's what he has to do better at.
Gentlemen, we have to hold it there. We'll have plenty to talk about, I'm sure, after the weekend. Michael Goodwin, Jonathan Martin, Miguel Perez, thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Kitty.
Still ahead.